Good evening and welcome to tonight's shiur. Today is Thursday of Parshas Korach. Let's see what we have as our preliminaries. So one of the benefits of giving this shiur is that people, if I make mistakes, people correct me. So one of the mistakes was that when you announce a website, you don't have to say HTTPS nowadays. You just say vimeo.com/963-655-633. And that is that's the link for my son Yaakov's rendering company, where if you have a building plan to have it all beautiful in virtual before it's built, help you plan it. So that's a contact there. If you want to have more information, get back to me. Baruch Hashem, the next preliminary is Baruch Hashem, the campaign for the fundraising for the Siddur has gone very well, Baruch Hashem. Thank you for those who participated. B'yayin tov and generously. We're now, I know it says here 18, we're now closer to $40,000. Bez Hashem, we'll get there, Korach, and be able to celebrate and enjoy the new Sefer. Over 100 donors altogether have participated. Okay, now, having said those preliminaries, also a mazel tov to Birchos Rabin and family on the chasna this past week of their son Shul. So, our first question is the Brocho hamapil. Is hamapil a shiur, or is it something which is optional? And the practicality of it is. אני באמצע שיעור עכשיו לא יכול לדבר. אני אתקשר לך. טוב. So the question is basically, it's the mother who's asking that she often goes to bed and then one of the children in the next room starts asking for attention, and then she has to be mafsik. And generally, we know that we're careful not to be mafsik after hamapil, so then it becomes a bit frustrating and perhaps to say, you know what, let's just not say it. And I've heard also of some krais in some circles where they avoid saying hamapil because of the chashash of hefsik. But on the other hand, if you think about it, it's a brocho which is written in the Gemara, like Tfilas Haderech is a brocho written in the Gemara, and so on. It's a brocho written in the Gemara. It's part of the Morning Brochos, and so it's Takonos Chazal. Who was it made for? I once asked my father, that something in the Siddur of Shalom. So I asked him about this thing in the Siddur. Do we have to say it? So he says, if it's something which you don't need to say, why would they put it in the Siddur in the first place? If it's there, it's there. Generally, that's the case. It's there to be said, yeah? Okay, but now we have here from the Piskei Teshuvos, you has here from a Sefer who was written by a Talmud of the Tzanzarov. So, and let's read what he has to say. Mitzad Hadin, he writes, Mutar Ladaber Achar Hamapil. Mitzad Hadin, you are allowed to speak after having said Hamapil. Ve'ene doimel hamoitzi. Don't compare it to hamoitzi. Once it's hamoitzi, you're not meant to interrupt until you've eaten some bread. It's not as if you have control to switch on. A pila paracha, yes, but most of us, we don't necessarily switch into sleeping at a whim. Sometimes you can't fall asleep, whatever it may be. So it's not like a brocha on food. It's a takono, like we say hashkivenu in Ma'ariv. And after that, we're still going to be awake for a couple of hours, possibly. And therefore, he says, if it's nochutz, if there's something urgent which comes up after you've said hamapil, okay, so you can address it. And for that matter, you're allowed to eat and drink if needed, if necessary. And there may be something else, even of some urgent errand, may be done after hamapil. This idea of not talking after hamapil is not mentioned in Rishonim, he says. Ramo does bring up this idea, minhag, of not talking after hamapil. It says, "Pasuk imrabel vavchem al mishkavchem v'doimusel." So this is a pasuk quoted in Gemara Brochos in connection with Krish B'Shalamito. V'doimusel. Okay, you've imrabel vavchem. You'll say to your heart, then perhaps this al levavcha, the Shema. V'doimusel, and then you're going to go quiet. So there's a minhag to be quiet, but it's not that there's the isur if necessary to interrupt. And he says, therefore, you are allowed to be mafsik if necessary. Then he has another loshon which is very significant. Hayoshim beli hamapil ka'oichel b'loi bracha. Although he has said don't compare it to hamotzi, on the other hand, he seems to be saying that this idea of sleeping is a hanoah, and it's as if it's like hanoah, you're making a bracha for the fact that Hashem gave us this benefit of sleep, and therefore, if you fall asleep without a map, it's as if you're eating without a bracha. So that's what he has from this Talmud of the Tzan Soroh. Then he has from the son of the Bnei Yisoscha, who says it's even more strict than eating without a bracha. At any rate, so what we are seeing here is certainly the advice is say hamapil. Even though you run the risk, you might have to interrupt. At this point, say hamapil. If you do have to interrupt, so is your fellow. Now, then what happens to some people who fall asleep and then they wake up middle of the night, so they realize they haven't said hamapil. So, and they're continuing to sleep. It's not as if they're going to get up now. So it's the middle of the night, you fell asleep without saying hamapil, and now you woke up. So Da should know. So there's also from the Piskei Teshuvos that if you fall asleep without saying hamapil and you woke up in the middle of the night, so long as it's not dawn yet, and you intend to continue sleeping, say hamapil then. Then he points out about washing your hands, negelwasser. We won't go into that now. But washing your hands before, because you've been sleeping, so you wash negelwasser. Now, I'm sure we're all familiar that there's a minhag not to say a bracha whilst negelwasser is in the room. I suspect that is referring to, first of all, that concept of not saying a bracha when negelwasser is in the room is not mentioned in earlier Sfarim. You're talking about something, let's say 200, 250 years ago, chido, etc. Remember, I once asked Rabbi Yosef Goldberg, Shul Rosh Hashiva in Brenoir, so going back 45 years ago plus, and he, a couple of days later, showed me it's in the Birchos. Okay, so we're talking about back then. It's a long time ago. Sorry, well, it's 250 years ago, but it's not in the Gemara or in Rishonim. So possibly this idea of not saying a bracha with negelwasser in the room is talking about the negelwasser at the end of your sleep when you're staying up. Well, negelwasser in the middle of the night, for whatever reason may be, wouldn't be a need to avoid saying brachas whilst the water's in the room. That would just be another how do you say, disincentive to say the bracha then. Let's move on. So someone asked this past week, there is a minhag brought in Shulchan Aruch and Siman Resh Samach Gimel. If someone fell asleep, if someone forgot to light Shabbos candles, if a woman forgot to light Shabbos candles, so then there's a knas, like a penalty for there. And then afterwards, every Friday before Shabbos, she lights an extra candle. So if till now she's been lighting 4 candles, now she'll light a 5th candle every Friday afternoon, Friday evening. So here's the question. It was asked, what about Yom Tov? Now, first of all, practically, it's not the same as Shabbos, because Shabbos, once it's sunset, you can't do anything about it. And you come to the table, you see there's no candles, or the candles haven't been lit. There's nothing you can do about it. It's Shabbos. Whereas Yom Tov, if you realize you come to the meal and you haven't bench licht, so all right, you can deal with it then. So it's the rare that there should be more far-fetched that there should be an incident of a woman not lighting Yom Tov night. Could be if they invited out or something and they forgot to light in at their hostess. Could be, but it's more infrequent. And there's a general view of milsa de lo shchicha, something which is unusual. There's no need to make a special institution, special takon. So that's one argument. Another point may not be so relevant in halacha. Is there a mitzvah to light Yom Tov candles? So I've seen in Shulchan Aruch says it is a mitzvah, and you make a bracha. That's what's done. There are Rishonim who say this is not a mitzvah because Shabbos, the mitzvah is to make sure before Shabbos you'll have light for the Shabbos evening. Yom Tov, you can deal with it as and when. So there's wasn't a need, but that's not what we follow halacha. We follow halacha, women do say a bracha, or man for that matter says a bracha lahadik, Yom Tov. So we take the view it is a shiur. As I say, the omission of not lighting is not such a common thing. Bottom line is, well, there are those who say that the knas does not apply to Yom Tov. Others say it does. And some say it's dafka from Yom Tov, other Yom Tovim, who says it means also for Shabbos. It's not clear. And the Piskei Teshuvos writes, I think wisely, that any doubt which is here in this thing of a knas should be dealt with. You should be tilting towards being more lenient. Quotes from Mishnah Berurah on a similar vein. We're talking about a knas which its origin is in later sources. Fine, and then we do have this knas. But if there's room to argue that doesn't apply, you can take the lenient view. Okay. So I would say not to worry about it. Just move on. Okay, so now we come on to a question which took me a while to research and come to some clarity. So here's the question. Someone's staying at a non-Jewish hotel and doesn't have his own Shabbos kettle. Is he able to take water from the hotel's hot water system, hot water urn, etc.? That was the question. So here we have now, first of all, to know the address. It's important to know the address of each halacha. Where's this discussion? Amiru l'nochri is in Simulation Zayin, is it? Various places around Shulchan Aruch is the idin of Amiru l'nochri. But here we're not dealing with Amiru l'nochri per se, as much as Hanor mimaise hanochri. What a guy did on Shabbos, melacha done by a guy on Shabbos, whether you had to have benefit from it. That the address of this halacha is in Siman Shin Chof Hei. So there you have a difference between if a guy lit a candle. There we use the principle of neir li'echad, neir lemeio. So you'll have to have a guy lit for himself a candle, and you're using the same room. You'll have to enjoy the light. When it comes to tavshil, a guy cooked food. Let's say in the case of a chole sheyesh besakona, the guy cooked food, and that was permitted for the patient. But then you wouldn't be allowed to have from that food because shema yarba bishvila, in case the guy will consciously add more food to cook more food for the healthy person. So then we're not allowed to have the food from which it was cooked by a guy. And the same thing, the guy cooked heated water for himself. Let's read this now. Although I've taught you Shin Chof Hei, this I'm reading from Shmir Shabbos Kolchoso, chapter Lamed. A guy boiled water for himself, where there's a concern that he may add water for a yid, then a yid is an osur to have benefit from that water, from that hot water on Shabbos, because of the concern that the goy might do melacha for you of lighting more water, of boiling more water. Then he goes on, if this concern doesn't apply, when it doesn't apply, say he doesn't know who you are, or you come into a coffee house and they're doing for their goyish clients and they've already boiled the water. Or if you are a guest in a goy's house, but you've told him, I don't need hot water Shabbos, and you boiled water, then you're allowed to drink it. This is what the Shmir Shabbos Kechosa says, and his sources are going back to some late Achronim, of people going out to a spa or something, a health resort, and whether they're addressing more the person's a choile, and that's why they're more kind of trying to accommodate. So it's not so glut, yeah. So let's read the last couple of lines. The Eid is staying in a Goisha house, and he told the host, I don't need hot water on Shabbos, and the guy heated water. Then you're allowed to heat water because you've told him I don't need water. That wouldn't help you in the case where you didn't tell them I don't need hot water. Yeah, so in a hotel, you don't go, you're not telling everyone you don't need hot water. So not so clear. Yeah. What I would say is though that from my little bit of experience is that in many of these places the hot water is plumbed in. It's not that they have a big urn like a Shabbos kettle and they fill it up and then rather it's connected to the mains, and there is in the whatever it's called, percolator, whatever it may be, but it's got let's say a container a tank which will contain 2 liters of hot water, of boiling hot water. As you take water out from the dispenser, so then cold water will come into the tank and the thermostat will wake up the element and it'll heat it. So really, first of all, I don't am I allowed to ask the goy to take water for me, even though I know it's going to trigger the mechanism of causing more water to be heated? And the answer is yes. I'm allowed to ask the goy, even though I know that more water will come in, because there's a rule in Amira Lenochri that psik reisha is permitted. I'm asking the goy to do A. The fact that B is going to happen as a consequence, that doesn't matter. So I would even be allowed to ask the goy to do this for me, knowing that it's going to add more water, because that's not the intent. So because they're plumbed in, so he's not doing anything. So I don't see a problem. Of course, yourself, you wouldn't be allowed to take from this dispenser because of what I've just described. Because as you take water from the dispenser, you're going to cause cold water to come into the system. But that's it for yourself. But to ask a goy, that's not a problem. So the one who asked me the questions got back to me today after he saw the list of questions. And he said, actually, he wasn't talking about a dispenser and at the bar. He was asking about taking water from a hot water urn. So it's less sophisticated. It's a simple urn. Would you be allowed to take water from there? There I'm a little bit concerned, as we've just seen here. I mean, if they have such a system, so then they're going to have to check up and see, is there enough water? And if there's not enough water, they're going to have to add water. So possibly they are going to be adding water because of their Jewish clients. Whether you're 1 out of 100 guests or 10 Yidden out of 100 guests, I don't think it makes a difference. The point is that they have to accommodate and provide water for their guests. So I'm concerned that that Indian of Shema Yarbe Bishviloi would still apply. Okay, let's move on. Since we're talking about hot water, so then that brings me, so I had some feedback about the last week's discussion about going to Starbucks. Just to remind you, I had discovered in Kitzur Shulchan Aruch that he quotes from the Panorama that having coffee in a coffee house is similar to having beer in a pub, where it says in Shulchan Aruch that you shouldn't be having a choshev, a drink, in the place where it's up for sale. So that was what I shared about this. Now, I got feedback from a couple of people Number one, there was someone in America, Rabbi Sean Bearhandle, I believe, and he's into this into kashrus in a professional way. See, I'm into kashrus as a consumer, yeah, whatever comes out of the kitchen, but he's in a professional way, and so he sent me a link to the CRC, that's the Chicago Rabbinical Council. We've got a very informative website, and they have an article you can see on the list which I sent out. You have the link there, and they talk about the Starbucks as an example, and how some of there's got like 20 different types of coffee which they have there. Some of them are clearly more of a problem. Now, the jugs, for example, and all this Rabbi Hendel also told me that the jugs which are used on the airplanes for giving out serving coffee, they will later be put in a dishwasher, and they will be put in the dishwasher with whatever else has to be washed up. Okay, that's one area, but then here they're talking about the various other complications with the coffee, with different types of coffee. So if you go to this link, you'll see a list of which types are no problem or less problem, and which are more problematic. And then I got also a call. We have one of our regular listeners in Thailand, Avrohom Ovinu. So he left me a message today that from his experience. See, I'm Haaretz. When it comes to Starbucks, if I have gone to Starbucks, I have to say Shechianu, yeah, because I've never been inside. So I'm just telling you what I'm hearsay, so to speak. So he tells me that he spoke to one of the managers of one of these coffee shops, and he says like the espresso. So the espresso, there's like a kind of handle with some kind of container which is put under the dispenser. So that removable handle, which is put on for making espresso, and then etc. etc. Those pieces are put into the dishwasher later, together with whatever else is being washed up. All right. So on the one hand, it's washed up with soap, which makes it less of a problem. And does it make it a Mishnah's Chassidim? No, it's not Mishnah's Chassidim. Okay. So that you can say that because it's washed up together with soap. Could be. We've gone through this before, that actually in dishwasher sometimes there's first a run of hot water without soap. So that's not really in itself a total confidence builder. Okay. So there is certainly room to be machmir. And what Avrohom Brill was telling me, that he shared this information with the mashgichim from the Eid HaCharedis, Badats, who come to Thailand. And once they heard this, they said, well, then that's the end of going to Starbucks for them. Have to manage without. On the other hand, on the planes, to ask us for hot water and and then adding your own tea bag or something, that shouldn't be a problem. Okay, let's move on. So we all know that there's a Gemara in Nido. It talks about ruach ra. It mentions three foods which, if they are peeled and left overnight, will attract a ruach ra, an evil spirit, and they are garlic and onions and eggs. Now, the bakeries, kosher bakeries, many of them will not. Some of them do have a mashgiach standing there and cracking eggs. Many of them don't. They buy ready a can of a liter or 5 liters of the egg yolk or egg white, and they use that for egging the challah, etc. So what happens? So this is bought from a manufacturer. Well, how does he avoid the inyan of a peeled egg overnight? So they add a bit of salt. So this is the general consensus, that although linas laila, leaving overnight, is an issue, but if it's been already processed to some degree, then we're not worried about ruach ra. So here's the question about this woman. She had cut up some onion, and then she mixed it with lettuce leaves, also chopped up, and mixed them, but no dressing was added. So this is the question: is this called processed or not called processed? So Fortunately, I managed to get this source. This is from the Sefer Samak, Sefer Mitzvahs Cotton, and writes here, he talks about this peeled garlic, peeled onion, and yesh bnei yodom she'einum oichlim shumim klufim. There are those people who do not have peeled garlic on Shabbos morning for this reason, because of it left overnight. V'yesh she'einum chosheshin. Now those who are not concerned, me'acha shelechem me'oira b'toichom. For some reason in their minhag was that they would mix with the chopped garlic, they would also mix in small pieces of bread, and that was already considered processed. So we see already from the Samak, there's room to say that once it's mixed with other foods, even though it hasn't been processed as such, it is already considered enough to call it processed and not a problem of linas laila. We've got to discuss this many times, and these inyonim of ruach ra, whenever there's room to say this is not mamish like the precedent in the Gemara, one takes a lenient view. Let's move on. So, a mezuzah on a caravan. We had some time ago a discussion about a similar situation, but there it was, a motorhome parked outside a house, and the daughter, when she does her music practice, she goes and does it in the motorhome. Doesn't need a mezuzah. Here we're talking about a different setting, where there's a person who actually does not have another home. This is their home. They've got a motorhome, and I asked, do they stay in one place? So they may stay for a few weeks in one place, and then they'll go somewhere else. So it is a little bit of a nomad state. And the question is, does it need to have a mezuzah? And then a mezuzah with a brocho. I was once in Amsterdam, or more than once. That if you walk in the middle of Amsterdam, where there's forgotten the name of the river, perhaps there's more than one, but there's lots of houseboats. And I think here in London also they exist. Pasha people live on these floating boxes on the side of the river. And they've got electricity. Back then they had phone wires, post box, delivery of post. The reason why they're living on these things is apparently it's much cheaper in tax at rates. So let's read the Shulchan Aruch. So we have in Hilchos mezuzah. So Siman Reish Pei Vov. Sukkah Chag B'Chag. A sukkah during Sukkahs does not need a mezuzah because it's temporary. Habayis Shebesfino, a house which is on a boat, is exempt from mezuzah. V'chanuyos Shebeshvokim. If you've got a kiosk which is in the marketplace, it's on wheels, whatever. It's something which is not, you don't live there on a regular basis. So these are potter. So if a bayis shebesfina is potter, you may take the view that the same thing, a motorhome should be potter mimizos. So now here we have from the Sefer on Seichel Toiv, which is a specialist Sefer on mezuzah, and he says, he quotes that I guess that must be Mr. Brewer, but I wonder Mr. Brewer would talk about it. Auto, a car. You're living bekvias, so efshe dechayev. And then he quotes though from Chelkas Yaakov, and he writes quite clearly: if a person lives in a motorhome, in a caravan, it is chayev b'mezuzah and with a bracha, even as it's moving. To explain, what is the difference between a house in a boat and a house which is like a motorhome? The answer is that a boat is to get from A to B. So although people on the boat, they're living in the boat, but then I'm not talking about the boats which are moored, or barges which are just in one place the whole time. Typically, a sfina would be traveling the sea, traveling from A to B. So people living in those boats are there just to get from A to B. Once they get to B, they're off the boat. Whereas if you'd be living in a more permanent, you're living in this motorhome. So then if this is your home, it's not for you to get from A to B. It's not just for holidays. You're actually living in this motorhome. then it's considered a kviyas. So it's not always in the same, how do you say, coordinates. You're sometimes in this part of town, that part of town, but it is for within there you are living with a big bayf and a kavua, and therefore he takes the view that you do have to put up a mezuzah in even with a bracha. Okay, let's move on. So since we're talking about mezuzah, so then we also hashgacha protis, we have another mezuzah question, very common question, and that is you have a front door and it has a mezuzah, and then in front of the front door there is a bit of a porch, and that's very common in our area, in the older houses at least, that there is also like another archway in front of the door. And the question is, does that archway in front of the door, does that require a separate mezuzah? Is it a separate Pesach, or is it just, we all understand you have a doorway and it has a bit of an architrave. And if the architrave is a bit more fancy, you're not going to put up two mezuzahs, one on the, right next to one another. We're going to say it's all one. So the question is, where do you draw the line? Where do you say it's all one entrance? And when do you say it's a separate entrance? That's really the question. So again, we're going back to the Sefer Seichel Tov, and this time it's Zimeresh Peites. And he says this question, when you have a very thick, a very wide doorpost, where do you draw the line to say that it's another doorway? So he quotes a Rashi about, I did not look up the Rashi. It mentions there about 4 or 5 tvochim, etc. Then he has another 6 tvochim. But then he brings from Koibet Torah Mitzion. I tried to locate this and I didn't manage. He says a base shar, which means a veranda, a porch, whatever you call it. If it is just the same width as the door, as the entrance, it's like just one big doorway. And he says, if the area in front is 4 amos or more, then you'd need to have a second mezuzah. But if it's less than 4 amos, so he says it doesn't need to have a mezuzah. So looking at this picture, I wasn't able to measure exactly, but I suspect actually from the doorway till the beginning of the post on the inside, I believe it's less than dal amos, which is about 192 centimeters, and in which case it doesn't need to have a mezuzah. I can say that on Holmley Road, Rabbi Yossel Pater lives there, and he's got there's not as ornate as this. It's the door, and in front of it there's a porch which is probably about a meter, a bit more, and then there's another archway closer to the street. And he doesn't have a mezuzah, and he holds it doesn't need to have a mezuzah. I think I've once discussed that with him. He feels it's all one doorway. It doesn't need to have a mezuzah. So here you see it's more than an amo, but it's less than dal damas, and he takes the view it doesn't require a mezuzah. Okay. Where are we holding? Number 9, yeah? So this week someone called me. He was at a chasana of one of his mechuravim. He was not the Rav Masada Kedushin. Someone else was officiating, and he somehow glimpsed at the ksuba. The chasana was on Sunday, and the ksuba said Bishlishi b'Shabbos. Now, by the time he spoke to me,
calls from 07471034944.
by the time he spoke to me, the Rav had gone home and the Adam had gone home. There was nothing much to be done in any case. But here's the question: if a star has this that the date is written, the day of the week is the wrong day of the week. So let's say the date. So in the Ksuba, we start off with the day of the week and also the day of the month. Let's say the day of the month was not today, but was in 2 days' time. It's post-dated. So is a post-dated ksuba valid? So here, well, generally a post-dated star is usually valid. Let's say if I borrow money from you, and the document or the IU document is post-dated. So that's not causing anyone any risk. The only one it's so, and therefore it's kosher. Shtar me'ucher is kosher. That's in Chesed Mishpat Siman Mem Gimel. So the same thing here. The ksuba, which is
called from 0, 7, 4, 7, 1.
the ksuba, which is post dated, is going to be a kosher ksuba. Now, my hesitation here is the ksuba is post dated, but for the interim between the chasna and until Tuesday, can you say there's no ksuba? Because it hasn't been activated yet. It's not valid yet. But then if you think about the reason why it's so important to have a ksuba, is that a husband should not feel easy to divorce his wife at a whim. So what's the difference whether the liability is going to be tonight or in 2 days' time or in a week? It's still going to be, the liability is going to be there, whether he's already liable today or liable in 2 days' time, but there is a liability then in any case. So really, from that approach, I don't see such a problem of a post-dated ksuba. Now, here we have on the screen the Ezer Mikodesh, that's from the Birchos Rov, and he deals with this a little bit. And he says he's not so concerned, but he's talking about it because it's a very short delay. But it seems from him that if it would be a longer delay, he would be concerned of the fact that there's no ksuba which is valid. And perhaps I've told this before. In Chabad, we are nohig to sign the ksuba during the day, even though the chasna is at night. Let me explain this. In 770, Reb Zalman Shimon, he would generally sign the ksuba, let's say 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, mincha time, and this would have been the winter. By the time the chasna was happening, it was already the next date, and he wasn't worried because at the time when the ksuba was written, it was valid, and so it's a kosher ksuba, even though it's not the date of the chasna halacha. It's a date, like a date early. But Rav Ashkenazi Rav Shalom used to tie like this. On the contrary, if you're going to have the date of the ksuba, the night time, how do you say, when is the power of the shtar is going to be at the end of the 24 hours. By tomorrow night, by sunset or by night, that's when it's going to be, how do you say, capable to demand with this ksuba. And therefore, that means the first night, they don't really have a valid ksuba. So he was concerned about this. As I say, I don't see it as being such a big concern. The other thing which I couldn't find, what is it if there's a discrepancy between the day of the week and the day of the month? Is that going to be a problem in a shtar? I didn't manage to find an answer to that. And as I say, there wasn't much to be done at the time in any case. So just looking for ways to say that, all right, the shtar me'ucher is gefährlich. I told the person if it's a shtar which is post-dated, it's not a problem. And so it's there. And as I say, the argument is also that there is a ksuba there, so it's not such a problem. Okay. I had today, was it a question, a teacher or a madrich, and he's in camp, and the kids are swimming. So he's not the lifeguard. If he's a lifeguard, I would not tell him that he's allowed to look at a safer while he's lifeguarding. But he's there just as in attendance in case there's some trouble, whether something he has to be there. But the kids are wearing what we call in England swimming trunks. In America, they're calling bathing suit. And he's asking, can I do my shchitas, my Rambam? Can I learn something? Can I say a brocha? Whatever. These kids are going around just wearing swimming trunks. So the answer is yes, you are allowed to. And actually, we're going to see in Halocho that your person's allowed to min hadin. Of course, it's a grabazach, but min hadin is allowed to say a brocha even if he's bare-chested. So let's take a look inside. This is in Siman Shulchan Aruch and Siman Ayin Daled. Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch. He says, if you have a robe wrapped around your waist. It's from your waist downwards. Even though from Mimosna V'Lamailo, his Orim is naked above the waist. Mutar Likres Kriyas Shema. You're allowed to say Shema because the ervo, the male organ, etc., is covered, and there's an interruption between his heart and chest and the ervo. To daven Shmoine Esrei or not, because when you daven Shmoine Esrei, it has to be Oimid Lifnei HaMelech. But for Shema, you're not Einim Medaber HaMelech, so you're allowed to say Shema in that form. As I say, it's certainly not a recommended thing. But minadin, it would be mutter to say Shema in such a state, and how much more so that for the madrich to be able to say to learn or say Adova Shebekdusha in that presence, that would be permitted. Just want to say, I don't remember who it was. He said that he was in Morocco as a shliach, and he was with my late uncle, Reb Levi Raskin. They were in Agadir or somewhere with a camp, and my uncle, who's the organizer of the camp, he was there when they went on the outings. So in the heat of a Moroccan summer, he is standing there with his kapot, with his hat, Shlich of Rebbe. So he's I should say all 9 yards there as a shliach. So he has to behave like a shliach. Right, let's move on. So now, this is the last thing which we have for today, and that is a melamed. I haven't missed out anything, yeah? A melamed drives his talmidim to a bar mitzvah. So it's a bar mitzvah of one of their classmates, and the family are on shlichus, so it takes a long time to get there. He's not familiar with the town, so he drives with his car with a few talmidim to join in this bar mitzvah. Gets to town, and you've got one of these local council money-making schemes that if you go to this road the wrong way or something, so you get slapped a penalty. So he's asking, is it legitimate to pay for this penalty from Meiser money? So let's come back on that's a fundamental question. If I am working for a company or for an employer, and I drive, if I park a company car on a no parking zone or a limited parking zone, and we get a knas, or maybe. So whose liability is it? The employer or the driver? It's true that he was driving on behalf of the company, but the company didn't employ him to park in the wrong place and to incur penalties. So this is what we have here in Shulchan Aruch and Sim Kuf Peches. Misha higia lo hezek b'mamayne. Someone who incurred a loss, machmas shlichus sholchai, because he was carrying out a mission of whoever's dispatching him, and as he's driving something, he got into some damage. He bashed into something. Or because he was involved in this, he was accused of something. So Shimon is working for Reuven, and whilst Shimon is driving around for Reuven, he incurs some damage or he incurs some penalty. That's not the liability of the one who dispatched him. So the employer doesn't have to pay for penalties incurred by the employee unless he had told him to go and to ignore the rules. But otherwise, it's the choice and therefore the liability of the employee. And of course, I have every sympathy that he didn't notice the signs, etc. It happens to all of us, but it's not something which he could pass on to his mishaleach. And therefore, although he was driving children for a bar mitzvah and it was to a shliach, but the mistake is his own liability, All right, the Eibishter engineered it this way. Okay, so the Eibishter will be mashlim, and I'll give him a way to reimburse him. But it doesn't. I don't see how it would be justified to claim that expense from Meiser money. I think that's what we have in for today. Just coming back, so I'll finish off again. Baruch Hashem, the campaign for the printing of the Siddur, we're past 40,000, and anyone who wants to contribute, so you have here halachic.org, and then /dedicate/products/HP-SRH, and Bez Hashem, we should get there, and we should be able to celebrate and enjoy the Sefer Shmoine in good health. Kol Tov to all of you, and good night, a good Shabbos, and good Chodesh, and an inspiring Gimel Tammuz. It's Shloshim Shana. When I was in going to Shlichus to Australia, so this was 30 years. It was Tov Shin Mem, 30 years from Gimel Tam, from Yud Shvat. And then there was the whole Korach, Vayihi b'Shloshim Shana Kiflayim L'Toshio, 30 years, like a double measure of strength. So Bez Hashem, we should take the inspiration, rededicate, and carry out the Rebbe's shlichus, and to fulfill the Rebbe's life's mission, which is to bring the Gula Shlema V'Amitis with Mashiach Tzidkeinu B'Meir Yameinu Mamech. Kol Tov.
Kaya, thank you very much.
So